Welcome everyone back to my channel for another Mirrors of Reality. So I have actually the graphic novels, I have all three of them, that was designed by Brian Froud. And I just finished the Netflix series, and I think that the Netflix series did a really beautiful job of showing some of the higher messages within the story. I was actually born in '82 when the original Dark Crystal movie came out. So that was a movie that I definitely cherished as a child. I loved it, and I thought that it spoke to me in ways that really make sense today. I love the Gelflings, of course. Their character really stood out to me, and they always had this really special kind of fairy type of element to them. And I love the story that played out between the Mystics and the Skeksis, and I would love to discuss some of the things that I saw in the new Netflix series and what I think was a really valuable lesson or important spiritual message to get from it. So, spoiler alert, I am going to talk a little bit about the ending. So if you saw the movie, then it's no big deal, because obviously the '82 movie was kind of the ending of the Skeksis rules forever. So I wanted to first read off kind of an intro from Brian Froud, who has many different fairy books that I own. He is an illustrator, and he's very in touch with the fairy realm, and he creates these wonderful characters and creatures. So Brian Froud created the actual creatures of the Gelflings and the Skeksis and the Mystics, and then Jim Henson took those illustrations and worked with him and created this movie with this deeper message behind it. So I wanted to read to you the introduction because I thought it was very important for you, and just listen very carefully to some of the languages used here. As I sat long ago over dinner with Jim Henson, and he invited me into his imagination, little did I know how a few words would grow into the living, ever-deepening world of the Dark Crystal. Jim said there were to be reptilian creatures living in a palace, mystical beings creating meaningful patterns and sound, all manner of strange creatures living landscapes, and, above all, spiritual transformations. And so there were. But as I drew and designed, I seemed to discover creatures and places from a civilization that had been long lost. It was more like archaeology than art, yet art it was. Everything that was created had to feel like it had always existed. There had to be a feeling of layered, half-forgotten history, an arcane culture sensed in costume and architecture. There were flora and fauna, diverse and exotic, all permeated with symbol and metaphor to give a depth of meaning to the myth-like story. When we finished the film, we knew that we had only seen a fragment of this other world. Peer into any of its mysterious corners, and there were suggestions of other evolving stories, other interior levels and places beyond to be revealed. Now we have a wonderful opportunity to shine a light into those dark corners. There is much to see and much to explore. The alchemy of glyph and graphic that transforms image and word into an emotional narrative is laid out in these pages. A narrative that reveals the hidden destinies of all the Dark Crystal personalities we know, and introduces us to characters that we shall come to know better in the unfolding story. We are entering into a space where everything has meaning, a space where the dynamic of good and evil is a complex dance, and the interconnectedness of all things has consequences of choice and action. It has been exciting to be involved again in developing more of the mythology of the Dark Crystal. I am in admiration of the savage beauty of Alex Sheikman and Lizzie John's art that wonderfully translates and expands upon the original world, and the remarkable and sage writing of Brian Holgan that elegantly expresses the shining spirit that entwines its way through the Dark Crystal. Jim Henson was a visionary. He continues to extend the invitation to travel within this magical realm, along with Alex, Lizzie, Brian, and the rest at Archaea. We are proud to be fellow travelers in Jim Henson's extraordinary vision. It is a privilege to present Jim's legacy, the continuing world of the Dark Crystal. So these 3 graphic novels that I own will basically go into even more depth than the Netflix series. But I think the Netflix series did a wonderful job of showing the beginning story of how the resistance started to form between the Gelflings and the Skeksis, and how really later on the Skeksis and the Mystics united as one, and it finally ended their reign. So as I was watching the Netflix series this weekend, I wrote down all of the ideas as I was going through the episodes. What were the certain messages or ideas that really penetrated to me as spiritual truths about this world? And being aware, when you awake into this world, you realize that there's things that are happening under the surface. And people may call them conspiracy theories, but actually they're the truth of why things happen the way they are. Now, there's a deeper spiritual message that is in the Dark Crystal of how we finally triumph over those dark things that are happening on Earth. So the Dark Crystal is a very important movie for all of us to watch and to learn how to see the deeper messages within them. As Brian Froud said, it's about the reptilian creatures that are in a palace trying to control the Gelflings of Earth. So here it is. It's about the elite doing secretive things that the masses don't know about, and the others supporting them blindly. When we begin the story, we learn about the Skeksis. And the Skeksis are the reptilian creatures, I guess. That's what Brian Froud always meant. So Brian Froud, he designed this creature to be really hideously ugly, but yet they were known as the Lord of the Crystals because they had knowledge and wisdom of stars and planets, and they seemed to carry this kind of immortal energy that the Gelflings were there to reveal, to respect. But really, they were almost like a priestcraft, like a higher priestcraft that were in charge of everybody on Earth, and they required tithes and things like that to give them spiritual, blessings. And so the Gelflings, they were innocent and they didn't know any better, and they have worshipped or at least devoted themselves to the Lord of the Crystals for a long time. And so that's what the Skeksis were. But underneath the Skeksis' knowledge and wisdom, they were doing things that were really for their own greed. They were immortal, but they were looking for more immortality when they came to Thra. They were not originally from Thra as a planet, but they came from somewhere else. And you learn that later on. And so they were seeking immortality on Thra because their bodies were starting to just disintegrate, and you see that in the 80s movie. They showed that very well. So the only way that they could live forever was to take the essence of the innocent souls that came from Thra, which were the Gelflings. The other side of the Skeksis is the Mystics, and they represent the balance of the Skeksis. If the Skeksis are greedy and cruel, and they want the power for themselves and then want immortality for themselves, then the Mystics are selfless and kind, and they see the higher and the bigger picture about everything. And they know deep inside what their destiny is later on, is to unite the other half with the Skeksis. And in doing so, that is truly how they end the rule of the Skeksis, because it's all about awareness and awakening. And I believe that that reflects our Earth very well, because we have people in charge that seem to be very spiritually blind. While they take from the Earth, while they take from others, tyrants and oppress others. I'm talking world leaders in charge of countries. They get into these places of power and they oppress others because they're not awakened spiritually to the interconnection to all beings. They're not the Mystics, they're the Skeksis. And we have Skeksis in the world. And this is why the darkness and evil occurs. is because they're only in touch with that greedy nature within themselves. Now, I want to tell you something. As a mystic myself, I am in tune with many different types of messages of truth, higher truths to awaken all souls on earth. And they are in some of the religious books. I must tell you, in the very first page of the Quran, there is a verse that says, "You will find the most evil on earth to be those that want to live forever." Why is that? It's because they're afraid of death, because they know they have a guilty conscience of what they have done on earth. Therefore, they don't want to ever die and experience their true nature coming to head of what they have done on earth. That would be a terrible hell for them. And they know that deep inside. So there's a quest for immortality. It's been described as those looking for the fountain of youth to live forever. You may hear conspiracy theories of weird satanic ritual abuse or some type of Luciferian type of abuse to children, taking their energy and youth and essence and sucking it dry so that they can live forever. This is dark magic. This is dark sorcery that's going on. And it does exist. And the dark crystal is trying to point that out, that there are those that do believe in some way it helps them live forever. And that it's quite evil to want to try to live forever, because when you do, you're doing it for selfish gain. You're afraid of death. You're afraid of transitioning. And those who are not afraid of death and transitioning in a natural way, they see that they can find peace, and they can see that there is, the point of earth is for all souls to learn how to let go of a guilty consciousness through the actions of learning and growing. And then when you die, you won't have anything to fear, as far as there will be no hell for you to experience, in a way where you will not be put up in front of your actions that you have done on earth, which is really what the Skeksis were scared of. And they actually said it in the Netflix series. So it was very interesting to see that. The Skeksis think that the Gelfling want to be ruled, and they say, "Gelfling are weak and small. Skeksis are forever, and there is nothing that they can do." And I thought that was really sad, but also very interesting, because it seems like there is an elitism that's going on in this world, a spiritual hierarchy, where people think that some people need to be ruled, or that some are lesser than them. We see that in the elitist top circle and the way that they speak. If you ever listen to some of the people that actually really control a lot of society, you will notice their language and the way that they speak about others that may not live as richly as they do. They will see them as smaller than them in some way, when it's not the truth. But of course, you have to be in touch with the mystical nature of interconnection within all of us to see that. But the Skeksis represent the inability to see that, or at least be in denial of it, because they wish to rule others and enjoy their time on earth. What you see in the Netflix series is very good, in the idea that you see that, I think it was a very good message, that the Gelflings innocently kind of patrolled their palace, and they would pay tithes in order to get blessings from the Skeksis. They were innocent, and they really revered the Skeksis as lords of the crystal, the wise ones with all the truth and knowledge. But after a while, the truth comes to surface. And what happens is the Skeksis' greed only grows stronger within them. So they start to experiment on the crystal, and they start to drain the essence of the Gelflings, not only the little creatures of Thra, which is their planet, but of the Gelflings themselves. So that is a terrible truth that comes to surface. And this is Jen and this is Kira in the movie, the 82 movie, but in the Netflix series, you learn that it's Rion that actually sees what goes on. And he loses his loved one, who's Mira, in a very powerful way. It's very sad to see. So the crystal absorbs her essence, and she goes back to Thra, but it's against her own will. She's not willing to transition to go back to Earth, but she ends up being taken prematurely, which is really the evil part of it. So this starts the stirrings of trying to spread the truth. Hey, this is what actually the Skeksis, the ones in charge, are doing. They're actually draining us of our essence, only to live forever and to be greedy. And so you see a resistance start to form. And one of the things that I really loved about the Gelflings, and they have this type of nature in them that makes them so much like the elves of Tolkien and so much like the elves of folktales and legends. And this is what makes elves different than humans. Elves have a way of never forgetting nature. They are always connected to nature, and they even can communicate with one another in a nonverbal way like trees can, and like the ecosystem can. They don't have to use words in the ecosystem with the animals and the plants and the trees. They do it through their energy and the way that they work. And a Gelfling and an elf, they have the same ability. They're able to actually dream fast, where they put their hands to one another and they can actually share each other's memories and thoughts without actually speaking. And it's something you'll see very common in elves in many stories and in Lord of the Rings too. You could see a sort of telepathy. And I think that that's a higher message for where humans can go to when they reconnect themselves back to nature and learn how to actually exchange information and energy like nature does. So that's what the elf is compared to the human. That's what the Gelfling is. And I think that that is beautifully shown. They're wonderful creatures, and I would love to live in their society. They had 7 clans that was shown in the Netflix series, and I think it was really great how they showed them. One of the things that I saw was there was the seer type of Gelflings. They kind of looked like Celtic druids a little bit. They were trying to kind of make that out for them to kind of look like. And so the Sifa is what one of the high Gelflings of the Vaprin clan, they kind of represent like the high elves, like the Lothlorien elves or the Rivendell elves. They're the ones that were closest to the Skeksis in terms of the Skeksis were giving them orders, and then the Vaprin were supposed to be the top of the Gelfling clan, and so they were like in charge of the other 6 clans, but not really, because they all lived so separately. But there seemed to be that hierarchy there. But then you learn that there's no such thing as that, and that the Skeksis did that to divide them in order to control them. And I thought that was important, because that's what happens in this world, is we are divided amongst each other by ethnicity and our culture, identity, and our borders, because united we stand together against evil, divided we fall and we fight each other, and we can never stand against the real evil that's in this world, the darkness that keeps us from having a truly harmonious world without crimes of humanity. Because those who are awakened, those who are truly really connected to the true nature within us all, we don't create crimes against humanity. We know the truth, that we are all one and interconnected. But of course, we have those players in this world, like the Skeksis. So that was a very strong reflection. And one of the seer Gelflings says that the dream space allow us to share memories while dream fasting. It binds us to Thra and each other. It's the world within us all. When I say I'm an astral empath, or when I'm reading the astral fields, I think the dream space is what they are referring to. And the dream space is something that we can all connect to. It's something that we can connect to within our own intuition, and we can communicate to each other through that way. Those that open up their third eye and have kind of gotten to that point, they are able to see this dream space, the astral fields and realm. I kind of came into the earth with that kind of there as a child. So that's why I've always been this way. But you can always work to seek it out, to open it. And that might be part of your journey, is to seek it out and open it. I had to learn how to open it further and to become more discerning of different energies that I would see in that astral realm of the spiritual world. So the Gelflings can communicate on that level. And how they're actually awakened to it is through a character, Agra, which is this character here. And she had a third eye. She had a third eye that glowed in the Netflix series when they came into the dream space. And I thought that was amazing to see that come forward, because that's basically what they were saying, is that when you open your third eye, you're able to communicate and connect to others off of this earth in the astral fields, through the emotions, through the energetic, the mind thoughts and waves, without even moving your lips sometimes. And that's what happens. So that was very interesting, that I thought that the dream space really relates to what many of us are getting in touch with today and remembering. And one of the strong messages within it is that the elder Gelfling that was trying to help Brea. Oh, I loved Brea's character. I thought she was great. She was a Vaprin that was against tradition, and she stood for more truth and knowledge. And she was one that was a major part in the resistance, because the Almaldra of the Vaprin clan, which was the queen, they didn't really have kings. And I kind of liked that. It was like a little bit of a different planet than Earth. The Almaldra of the Vaprin clan was too close to the Skeksis. She couldn't see what was really going on. But Brea, who was curious, she was looking deeper into what was actually happening. And she's the one who starts to kind of awaken and see things that, she didn't really have to see physically like Rian, but she knew that something was going on. She was being led by visions of symbols and things like that. But one of the things that happens is the elder soothsayer sees a symbol as kind of the end and destruction. And it's a 3-leaf type of symbol within a triangle. And the younger Sifa says, her name's Annika, she says, well, symbols mean different things to everyone. I see life and a new beginning, while he may see darkness and the end. And that's very true. When all of us look at a symbol, there's not really one meaning, is there? It's about how we interpret. Now, of course, there's going to be an absolute truth of the meaning by the person who first created that symbol and what that symbol means. But when we look at a symbol and we are not the original creators of it, it's about our perspectives and how we see things. It has nothing to do with your age, because the elder soothsayer saw destruction and end, and the younger seer saw a new beginning. So wisdom is not really about age. It's more about how your perspectives are and how closer to kind of the truth of kind of the collective story in a way, because obviously it didn't mean the end. It meant a beginning, a resistance to form, so that a new beginning could be had. So 7 tribes of Gelfling was used in union. It used to be in union and order, but the Skeksis were the ones that divided them. And I thought that the 7 tribes was interesting. 7 is a sacred number, of course. 7 chakras, 7 sins, 7 virtues. You'll find 7 in kind of a mystical way. It always pertains to us in some form. And the 7 tribes of Gelfling used to be in union and order, but they were divided. And Brea was the one who discovered that the true balance is found when the natural order is sound. So even though she was told that the Vaprin clan was always head of everything, she started learning, well, actually, we're all equal. All the Gelfling clans are equal, and that there was this order that was created so that the Skeksis could keep order. It's like a pyramid scheme, basically. That's what the Skeksis created. whereas really spiritually they were all equal and lived far more harmoniously when they had no one really in charge and no hierarchies. So there were 7 clans. I loved how they kind of described them, and I just thought that these kind of characters were really beautiful to see. The Groton were kind and gentle, but they lived underground and they took care of the animals in the caves underground. So they did not live on surface. And their environment was so beautiful with glowing, types of creatures, and everything was really just really beautiful and exotic to see. And I loved Deethra. Her character was just amazing, and she becomes a very, very valuable part in playing resistance against the Skeksis. And then you have the Vaprin, which were the high society elves, kind of like the Noldor or the Lothlorien elves, I said, and they lived in the mountains with the snow. Kind of looked like maybe Sweden or something. They had, kind of an air about them. They were definitely known as like maybe the more arrogant or haughty of the Gelflings, but that's because they lived in the most affluence, it seemed, that they had the most wealth of the other clans. And they were directly connected to the Skeksis. So the Skeksis kind of helped them with that wealth. So that's also why they also had that wealth. The Drenchen were the warrior elves. That was the Rian who caught the plot of taking the essence from the other Gelflings. And they reminded me of like the Mirkwood elves, like kind of this native type of warrior image. And I love seeing that. And they lived in the forest. They were known as the stone and wood Gelflings. And then you had the Sifa, which were the seers, and they were kind of like the gypsies. They seemed to be like the outcasts and known as like dangerous, but they also had this kind of Celtic druid type of thing about them. And I liked seeing that really complex character there. The Sprighton, they were the simple prairie folk. I think they lived in like the grasslands, and they just seemed very simple and kind. And the Dusan were the desert realm Gelflings, and they had kind of like this ocean and desert type of mix where they had like flying stingrays that would travel across the desert sands. I just thought it was an amazing image. It really pulled you into the world of theirs, just like the movie did in '82. I feel like the Netflix series did a wonderful job of that. So the one thing you start to learn is that the Skeksis also have a bit of goodness within them. They have to, just as yin and yang is. So one of the Skeksis, the scientist, he starts questioning things. He's concerned, and he says, well, how many Gelfling must we drain to cheat death for all eternity? Emperor, I beg you to reconsider. The more essence we consume, the weaker the crystal grows. The greater the imbalance, the faster the darkening will spread, which destroys the planet Thra. So here's the thing. The Skeksis did not want to destroy the planet. They wanted to live on the planet as long as they could so that they could rule over the Gelflings. So some of them were starting to wake up and see, well, this is not a very good idea. And so you see that start to happen. But of course, some of the Skeksis, like the Emperor and those who sit, at the high places, they're just too far gone within their own psyche to even see any kind of logic and reason. And their quest for power is what starts to destroy Thra, because the crystal, something to know, the crystal is connected to Thra. It's like the physical representation of Thra. And then you also have Aughra, which is also a physical representation, like a mother kind of earth kind of character of that planet. So she is the one with the greater wisdom even than the Skeksis, and she is the one who helps the Gelflings, start to formulate a plan. And the plan is that what Aughra's plan is that first there needs to be a resistance by the Gelfling. So the Gelfling need to come together and stand up. And they need to awaken and be aware of what's actually going on. Then the integration of the Skeksis and the mystic needs to occur. because the mystics represent the other side of the Skeksis. So the mystics always know that. They had that deep inside of them, and they knew and they were prepared for that day that they would reunite with their other half. The Skeksis were not, or at least they didn't say it, and they were in denial of it, and they loved to have their rule. So the mystics are waiting for that day that they can rejoin. And so the integration of the Skeksis and the mystics is really what's going to be the next part of the resistance against the Skeksis. And then finally, the transformation into oneness, in which finally the beings that were the Skeksis and the mystics split will become one, and they will be able to return back to their planet and leave the Gelflings alone to enjoy their planet together as 7 clans and not have any kind of ruling class over them, but just enjoy Earth. Doesn't that sound a lot like Earth today? We simply need to get rid of any kind of hierarchies on Earth. And we will have wise leaders in charge, of course, to give advice and counsel and guidance, but we shouldn't be ruled. And once we get rid of those that have the inability to see a spiritual connection to all that they rule, we will have a far more fairer type of authority, or at least leadership in charge, that can help us move into the next phase of the new Earth, in which we live with really advanced technology and coexist beautifully with nature. And a whole lot more people are going to be happier because they will have more wealth to them and abundance, and everything will be very equally shared amongst one another, or at least everything that you do will be rightfully returned back to you in the amount of whatever you create on Earth. You will get back what you actually deserve for your creation, rather than some at the top taking from you in a very, very unfair way because they did not do the work. It's like the idea of what the Gelflings were doing for the tithe. They were paying the Skeksis, but why were they paying them? They were not receiving really anything, and the Gelflings were the ones that were tending the land and keeping everything going. So we need to get rid of that hierarchy. We need to get rid of the Skeksis once and for all. And the Dark Crystal movie was trying to tell us that. But how to do it is the way that I think the Dark Crystal really penetrates to the deeper meaning of it. And one of the things that I thought was really powerful was Agra's character in the Netflix series. She was the one that originally placed the Skeksis in their power, because when the Skeksis came down from their planet, well, they weren't Skeksis, but they were, well, yes, they came down in the form of Skeksis because they basically have already split their consciousness. And they seem to have all this knowledge about the stars and the planets. And Agra looked to them, and she kind of placed them in this position of power. And so when she goes to the sanctuary tree and she says, "Please talk to me, old friend," because the trees are the ones that know what's going on, and they actually help Deet with a vision to see what's actually happening on the surface. The trees know, nature knows what's going on Earth. So when you connect to nature, you also get messages of what's happening too. And that's why when you start to get really concerned about the environment and about Earth, you start to get messages within you of what's really going on and why there is corruption of nature and Earth. And that's really important, because that's part of humanity's awakening, is that when each human awakens to a connection to nature, they will get messages and downloads about what's actually going on, because nature knows. Nature knows why it's being destroyed systematically, and why it's reflecting what's going on in society. So she says, "Dear friend, I'm so sorry. You know, I looked to the stars and to the planets, and I forgot about Earth." Even though she's the physical manifestation of Mother Earth, she basically neglected Earth because she was so just kind of awed by the Skeksis and their power and their wisdom. And so I thought it was a beautiful moment where she's like, I don't want to be forgiven, but please just make this little creature come back alive that the darkening was affecting and killing, the darkening of the crystal. And so the sanctuary tree brings back this little creature to life. And she says, that's it. I just want to sit with an old friend. So she's not looking for forgiveness. She knows the choices that she made, and she decides to sit. But then, because she accepts her mistakes, it's a type of opening that happens within her. And so she does start to connect to the sanctuary tree. She starts to connect to what's happening, and that's when she gets her messages. What I wanted to say about that is that I like to take on the identity of a starseed, and I believe that is part of me. But what I have also found in some starseed communities, and I've heard people say this, whether you're an alien, whether you're a starseed, if you want to go home and you're constantly looking at the stars, you forget about Earth and you forget about your life. And that was a very strong message, that when you're constantly looking outside of yourself to the stars, then that's a problem. You forget everything that's right underneath you. So it's about balance. It's about being aware of the stars and having that curiosity within you to look to the stars and space, but never forgetting Earth as well, and trying to seek for that balance. So the plan is, wake up the Gelflings, start the resistance that way. But that would not be the only way, because war is never really the way. War is never ending, and it really never gets to the heart of the issue. And what's the heart of the issue is what the Heretic, who is actually, he used to be a conqueror Skeksis. He used to be a very evil Skeksis, but one day he had a vision. So he started to warn the other Skeksis about basically what would happen to them if they kept going down this path of being greedy and wanting more power. But the Skeksis, they threw him out. And so that's why he was called the Heretic, because he was the one outside of the church, basically trying to give the true spiritual messages of what was actually going on and what was happening. And so he was called a heretic, because heretic is what we use on earth for those that are against the churches, but have some type of spiritual message to give anyway. But it may not be completely what the churches are trying to tell. So you have to use discernment. Are the heretics the one with the truths? Or are the ones in power in the churches? So he was known as the Heretic now. He was cast out of the elite Skeksis circle, but he helps the Gelflings since he understands the Skeksis' true nature. He awoken to his true nature, and when they go to the Circle of the Suns, there's a triangle with two circles inside it on his chest as a symbolism, and I believe that they were pointing to the Illuminati or to a similar secret order that believes that they are here to unite things. Morgue official talks about this a lot, the idea of synthesizing the two sides together, of the good side and the bad side, and bringing it into oneness. However, I will say, I am not part of those secret orders. I am completely outside of the Illuminati and all that, but yet I know this truth too. I believe people can awaken to this truth without having to be part of those secret orders. And that's kind of what my channel is about. How do I get to those people and help reawaken people without having to form a secret order, or, there's nothing required. I could just pass down information freely to everyone that I have felt inside and have tapped into. And if you watch The Dark Crystal, you can find. There's ways to find it. But yes, that symbolism was very apparent and very strong on his chest. He was wearing the triangle with the sacred geometry on his chest there. And the Heretic was the one who actually shows the resisting Gelflings that were kind of growing the true nature of Thra, the history of Thra. And the Heretic says that what happened is he got in touch with his other side, the mystic, and he says that he's very alone, but he's also with himself. And then it shows it's a mystic in the circle of suns. So you immediately get that message that they're one. They mirror each other. And so he starts to say that when he awakened, he met with his mystic, his other side, and they together formed a secret plan to help unite the two sides later when Gelfling awakens. So it's all part of the Gelfling awakening to unite the two halves of the higher dimensional beings that came. And I can show you a picture of them because it's very much like it was in the movie. And I'm going to read you what they say here. Sorry. I'm going to read you what they say. They say this: "We 18 represent the only dissenting voices in our ageless culture. When we became too disruptive, we were severed from the grace of our world. Cast into the crystal where one links to all and all link to one, we were stranded here, left to ponder our own natures, to find in ourselves that which is good in all Ursek, so that we may rejoin our civilization when the time is right." So they came to Thra in a form of split psyche like this, the mystic and the Skeksis, and their path is to unite. And then these higher dimensional beings who lost their way will find themselves again. They will find their true nature, and that is when they will be able to return back to their world. They are actually outcasts. So I thought that was very deep in the idea that we have those in power, that if everyone kind of awaken to the light within themselves, the masses, okay, underneath those that are in power, if all of us awaken to the light within ourselves, we can be a mirror to the light within them. And I believe that that's a bigger message coming through the dark crystal, and that is a message for all of us. And that's what the consciousness shift is doing. We may think that those in charge, it's not affecting, and that, you know, nothing is going to happen, and that we need to rebuild the world outside of them. But really, we are here to awaken them and remind them of their humanity, to remind them of their goodness, so that they stop polluting and corrupting the earth and stop creating these wars and depopulating humans and, for greed. We need to awaken them by our awakening to our true selves and to our light inside. And that's what the dark crystal was trying to say. I believe that there was a message given to us by Jim Henson in something that he tapped into, the way that the world is and the way that society works. So they get the true history of Thra, and the goal is to unite the two schisms, the mystics and the Skeksis, into one. That happened when they experimented on the crystal and caused their own split in psyche. Skeksis want to rule over Gelfling because they are the closest to Thra and have the power to take their planet back. So that's the thing about the Skeksis, is they chose to rule over the Gelfling, to use the essence of the Gelfling, because they're the ones closest to their planet. And what that tells me is that humans have the same ability to reconnect to nature. And I mean, we are from nature with the minerals and everything that we were created from. And as soon as we reconnect to nature, we reawaken and we know the truth. We cannot be ruled any longer because we will have the answers. But while we are basically distracted, I'm getting to the quote where the Skeksis said this, which was very interesting, that Skeksis thought that the Gelflings were pets. And he said, is a slave if it doesn't know it? You have dancing, you have eating, you have this, you have entertainment. Enjoy. You either have a choice to be pets or enemies. Gelflings live for a few years, and the Skeksis are immortal. And I thought that that was interesting because, yes, that's how society works. While we have crimes against humanity and things like that that go on, we are distracted by, just entertainment and things to look at, things to buy. And if you can get past the society type of temptation to look at materialism and, gain the next like Apple and just if you're always struggling to try to follow the fads and you're part of the gossip in society, you might miss the underlying truth of actually what's going on. Well, why are there wars? Why are there people suffering and dying? What is going on? So if you can look past that and not be distracted in the way that they're trying to distract people, then you will know the truth. And that was something that he said and was very important. So after the goal is to unite, I thought that this was very good to show. I like this because there's no doubt I think like this. I'm completely a mystic in that idea of I think through things in a metaphorical way, and I get visions, and I am in touch with the spiritual nature of things. But then the Skeksis kind of represent that opposite side. It's like the left brain and the right brain. And so you have more the logic, kind of materialism type of nature. And you see this where the mystic says, what's good in the gourd is good in the gelfling. And the Heretic says, who says that? And he goes, and the mystic says, everyone. And then he realized in that very moment that not everyone sees that in their different perspectives. That if you're coming from different places and perspectives of the source, you're going to have a hard time seeing each other's perspectives. So the goal is to open your mind to see each other's perspective and not be on one side or the other, but to unite the two halves of the brain, the right and the left brain, in a very conscious way that you're balancing the emotion and the intellect, and you're balancing that. You're balancing that within you, and that quest to do that will allow you to see more of the truth that's trying to come through to you from your higher selves. But the mystic is in tune with the collective unseen energies, the tales, the lores, and archetypes and fairy tales established in the subconscious of Froud. And that's why he said that everyone says what's good in the gourd is good in the gelfling. Like he's in touch with kind of the collective sayings that have been spread, or the stories have been spread. And, the heretic's like, who says that? And he goes, bah. And he thinks that it's just a bunch of mumbo jumbo. But what it shows here is that both are wise in their own different ways. And they represent different perspectives and experiences in the world. But they're both wise because the heretic is a Skeksi that has awakened to his true nature. But he's still not like a mystic. I thought that was really neat to see that the two halves can be as one, but they might not think the same or be the same and even act the same. But at least you can be united with one another spiritually and understand, not to hurt each other, because he says, you and I are one, and what I feel you do. And that happens when the mystic archer, who's the opposite of the Skeksi hunter, and they have this moment together, and he says that whatever you do to me, you do to you. And that's where humans are getting to and need to get to, so that they don't hurt each other anymore. When you awaken to the truth of your interconnection, you do not hurt each other, because you know that deep inside it will hurt you. 7 clans, 7 fires, joined as one in the cause of unity. Alone you are small, but together you are strong. Be that flame. That's what the heretic says. So this is all about the gelflings coming together, getting rid of the hierarchies of the clan and just joining as one so they can stand up to the Skeksis. This is very much how we have to be on Earth. We have to see our differences as for what they are, different perspectives and different ways of expressing life, but we have to come together and unite under one idea. Get rid of the corruption on earth. Get rid of the evil and the crimes against humanity so that we can stop the suffering. One of the things that the death transition I think was so important is that death is seen as returning back to Thra, and it's gladly welcomed within the Gelflings, not as far as like seeking out death, but you understand that when your time comes, there's nothing to be afraid of, that is your time to move back to Thra, to be one with everything. And I thought that was a beautiful way of seeing death, and that can help humans to start to see death in that way. Now, I don't believe that we should search out death prematurely because it is about spiritual development. So if you don't spiritually develop yourself in one lifetime, you will have to come back and work on same issues. So if you're interested in moving forwards, you will keep going and you will not try to end your life prematurely. The psychedelic plants are in the circle of the sun. That is to say that the heretic and the mystic that was there were kind of like the shamans, and they had the circle of suns there and all the plants that would give you the visions of what was actually happening. Psychedelic plants and drugs are used today on Earth to do that. Many times when people do those things, they do get visions of what's actually underlying the material world. However, it shouldn't be used as a form of escape. It can be used as a way to tap in and see what's going on, like I have done in my life. But I'm not addicted. And I don't seek for those visions all the time. And once you have those visions, you don't really have to keep going to those psychedelic plants. You already have it deep within you. It awoken something within you, and that's it. And you move on. It's different than chemical type of other drugs that people do, like heroin and meth and all those, because those are the types of drugs that actually cause a dependency on that escapism. And that's not what you want to do, because that will make you lose sense of who you are on Earth, and you'll just not live on Earth anymore. You'll be trapped within the two worlds. So psychedelic plants can help you have visions, but you shouldn't use them all the time. But they were in the circle of the sun because that's very much a shaman type of thing, and they were trying to give that message. And we do have it on Earth. So one of the things that's really important is that you can't fight within the duality. So we can't fight the Skeksis or the people in charge by, violence. It just doesn't work. You have this never-ending war, and at the end of the Netflix series, you see that the Skeksis, they run away. But then in the 1982 movie, you see that they come back. So they didn't get rid of the Skeksis forever. The only way to get rid of the Skeksis forever is to awaken the Skeksis to the good within themselves. And once they do that, they will be different completely. And they will not want to rule the Gelflings in that kind of way. And maybe they'll even just want to leave the planet. Obviously, they become united as the beings, and they do leave the planet. So that was the message in the Dark Crystal. And I think that goes for our planet as well here. One of the things also that they said was when the Gelflings were being brainwashed by having a little insect that was telling them, I am the ascendancy. I thought that was very important, because something that happens is some people are afraid of the word ascension, that the word ascension could be used against you, and the idea that you think you're ascending, you think you're giving up your life. Take the cult of the one that, all these cults, when they end up giving their lives, like the Jim Jones and also the UFO cult, when those people died, they believed that they were ascending that way. And that's not the truth. That is an illusion. You do not ascend by giving up your life prematurely. You ascend when you actually go through your life and you spiritually awaken. There you can reunite yourselves, but you cannot do it through trying to escape this world without that. That's what spiritual bypassing really is. So that is what happened. They were saying, I am the ascendancy, and they were marching. Basically, the Gelflings were marching into the palace to be drained of their energy so that they could keep the Skeksis alive forever. So they were being lied to and brainwashed. And I thought that was kind of an interesting reflection of what happens here. Be careful with the idea of ascension, because if anybody ever says you have to ascend by giving up your life, they are completely wrong, because it's not about giving up your life. It is about transforming within your life. So I thought that this was a really wonderful job done by Netflix series. And after you watch the Netflix series, now you should watch the movie, because then you will understand what happens, because the Netflix series ends at the idea that the resistance of the Gelfling was rising, and they were congratulating each other at the end and thinking that it was over, but it really wasn't over, because the Skeksis just retreated back into their palace, and they were creating a new army. And so when the movie starts, you see that army already there, and you see them ruling once again. And then Jen, the new age Gelfling that comes about, he has to be the true hero. Well, the shard that we see in the movie that he places in the crystal to unite all broken pieces of the crystal. This is Jen, and then this is the crystal here. When he unites the shard, that shard was from the series, and I liked how they played into that very well and showed that continuation. So I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And I think that it has many different reflections of what is going on Earth. And I say that we just have to keep on going and awaken ourselves, and those that are doing the most evil acts on Earth, they will one day awaken too. When the majority of us awaken, they will awaken too. Why? Because we are them and they are us. We should not stand by and let them do these evil acts. Of course not. You talk about it, you spread awareness, you do whatever you can when you see really unjust things in the world done to others. But you can't fight them with violence. You have to fight them by you transforming and then being an example for others. I think over time this will happen, the more and more people awaken, and I think that that's what this human consciousness shift is really all about. So I think that the Dark Crystal has many wonderful, just really deep and profound messages for everyone, and I think that everybody should try to watch it if they can. I saw the question, is it only on Netflix? Yes, because Netflix itself actually produced it. So I think that it's only on Netflix, but it might be available later on, maybe on something else. I mean, maybe, but as far as I know, I think it's just a Netflix series. If anybody knows that you can find it somewhere else, then definitely maybe include that in the comments for others, because I know not everybody has Netflix. But it would be worth it just to sign up for Netflix because it's so good. I feel it's really a great one. But if you don't want to do that, you'll still get a lot out of either the graphic novels, which I have 3. Here's the other one. And the art is so beautiful in them. I just think that these are worth it. I got these off of Amazon, so you can get the whole collection. Or you could just watch the movie. And the movie is really well done, of course, but both the graphic novels and the Netflix series will give you the backstory and the background that you don't see in the movie. So the two together, it's like the two halves coming together in Dark Crystal. They unite and they make a full picture of what is the real message. So I guess that's all I wanted to say. Is there anybody had any questions or comments? It's highly spiritual. I agree. It really is. And I'm so excited that they did this. It just seems like it's playing really well into the way that things are happening in humanity. That Netflix took this series on in order to help humanity maybe awaken even further. Sometimes the problem with those that are most greedy in the world and and doing these things in the world is they have a hard time seeing the spiritual nature of things. So there's always these hidden messages in movies and in books. A lot of people who are part of secret orders, they actually are film directors and authors and artists. And they showed that in the series, because when you went to the Circle of the Suns, what did it look like? It looked like a puppet show and a theater. They were trying to say that the artists in the world, the ones that are sending messages visually and, you know, in entertainment form, sometimes have the messages for truth. But you can tell what the difference is, because I guess you just have to see for yourself. But there are some forms of entertainment that is there to divide us. So you have to use discernment to see what is the messages that are good for us to help us awaken, because it's our higher selves basically trying to reawaken us. And then what is the messages that are actually trying to keep us asleep. So yeah, that was a really interesting take on it. I think they did a beautiful job keeping it puppets and actually not, you know, all computer graphics, because I thought that was a really respectful nod to Jim Henson. And I don't know if you could see my poster here, but yeah, I love the characters, and the art is just so beautiful, and the creatures like Brian Froud created, I mean, it's just very exotic. So thank you all for joining. I'm so happy that I got a chance to discuss with you, and I highly recommend it, because I know I gave basically the whole plot away, but watching it unfold can also be really fun for you too, because it's just, I left out a lot that still was in there with deeper meaning. So these are the things that I wrote down while I was watching and going through the episodes, and what means so much to me. And one thing I want to say too is, not only is it a message for the outside world, as far as, you know, us reuniting, the masses reuniting with those in charge and reminding them of the goodness within themselves, but also it's about us reuniting our dark side and our light side, and having our light side remind ourselves what we are, you know, because when you do dark things, or you make these choices to hurt others and things like that, that's your emotional side, you know, reacting to the stimuli of the earth. But the light of your spirit, if you can get in touch with that daily, if you could do, you know, your meditations, if you can go out into nature, if you can get self-reflective and really think deep inside yourself, I think that you can get in touch with that inner goodness that can remind yourself to just not do those darker things that cause others harm, and others and yourself harm, of course, too. So it's also a message about each of us having to unite the two halves of both the dark and the light. Not necessarily accepting the darkness as far as saying that, oh, dark acts and deeds are okay. No, but they could be understood, and they could be accepted as far as knowing where they come from. And with that awareness, that's when you stop blaming yourself and going through a cycle of kind of self-hate. Would actually, in people, it actually causes more darkness to come out. And so when you can give yourself forgiveness, acceptance, and wisdom, you will not do those dark things any longer. That has been my experience, and I think that's what the dark crystal also was trying to say. Goodness is not an insincere, fluffy, rainbow-filled type of energy. Goodness, I believe, is something that exists within us all to make sure that the collective runs in the way it's supposed to, by offering an expansion of life and consciousness to all its beings. So I believe that when you get in touch with the goodness part of yourself, it's like the Jedi Force, you know, the light force is within everything. The dark force is against everything and wants to destroy everything. So the more and more you uncover the light within yourself and the goodness within yourself, it actually transforms you into a better person to make the better choices, like Brian Froud said. And when we all make better choices to take care of our earth and take care of those around us, and just within ourselves, to be kinder to ourselves, that strengthens us as a collective. And we are able to then live together, more in peace and harmoniously, and enjoy a more peaceful, happy life. That's what I definitely believe. Oh, Sam K just asked, have you seen the movie The Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus? I have, and I will do a video on that because there are tons of symbols within it. So absolutely, that will be sometime soon. All right, everyone, I have to get to work. So I hope you all have a wonderful day. Han and Lei for watching, and I'll see you next on another video. Take care.